Welcome to the Bold Analysis. My name is Frank. The decision by William Ruto to fire all the cabinet secretaries that he himself appointed to be in the government has exposed how badly the president failed to hear the plights of Kenyans all over those years. There is this clip of the ODM chairperson John Mbadi in Parliament warning the president over his cabinet selection sometimes back in 2022.
We have a choice to make either decision to reject over 60% of these names or give President Ruto his skunk. Let us not interfere with it. We give it to him. He has asked for it. Let us give him his cabinet. We know he's going to run the government from State House. These are not people who can run a government. Apart from a few individuals who are not even more than 8, the rest are incompetent, unqualified, have integrity issues, are people who cannot deliver this country from where it is to the next level that we want the country to move in.
After listening to John Mbadi, then I want you to listen to Senator of Busia, the People's President, Okia Omtata, also telling Ruto that it is not yet the end of the road, even with the firing of the cabinet secretaries. And of course, yesterday, the Gen Zs reverted to their spaces in order to discuss and deliberate on the actions that were taken by the president. And I got a snippet of one Kasmel Makoure speaking also on the same, still maintaining that Ruto still has to go despite him having dissolved the cabinet.
There's been a call of other things. I hear I don't know if the cabinet has been dissolved or stuff like that. That is like putting balm on a wound. What we demand, or what I personally think is ready to happen, is that the entire Kenya Kwanza administration, led by Mr. Ruto, must vacate power. The call that Ruto must go is not an idle call. It's a call whose time has come. It's a call whose time has come. Mr. Ruto told us that criminals were on the streets. He has not produced a single criminal. You cannot be told lies every day. Senator. So I'm demanding that President Ruto vacates office as the only honorable thing to do. He's unable to balance our budget. It has collapsed. Everything around him is collapsing. So you cannot say that his juniors should bear the burden. The ball stops with him, and the call that President Ruto must go is a call that must be applied. And as they say, a fish begins rotting with the head. So, and among my people they say, a river does not flow higher than its source. And when you look at the sun, you must blink. Justice is crying out. Our children have died. Something that has never happened in this country. The president has called them criminals. And the president cannot continue sitting in power when the children have died. And he said you do anything at whatever cost. When the Constitution says you can't do anything at whatever cost. So my call is to associate my voice with those who are saying that the president vacates office. There's no room for all these things we are doing here, and we start off with a new slate. Mr. Speaker, sir, anything less than that will not avenge the blood that has been spilled on our streets. A street that is hallowed, a street that is recognized in the Constitution as an arena for engaging politically. As the arena whereby when this institution fails, the people of Kenya invoke Article 1 and go to engage. When you desecrate such a venue, you don't do anything. There's not even a call that these things should be investigated. Instead, they're trying to say that we go and have dialogue to assuage, to see, I don't know how to distort what is happening, to do whatever, to see how. I just look at these people like prison guards who are fighting for who becomes the chief warden. Then they learn that there's a prison break. So they all forget about what they are fighting for. They say the first thing we must do is to ensure that this prison is not destroyed. Because their business is the prison. Their business is to keep the people in the prison. So they are now coalescing, forgetting about the fight they were having, who becomes the chief warden. Now they are saying the prison must be kept intact. We're not going to allow that. This country has moved. The government that has to govern this country must govern by law.
Try to push a tribalistic agenda. You've seen people try to say in Eldoret that this is a plan by Kikuyus to try and remove Ruto, as the way people used to say Moi must go. You've seen people like Gladys Wanga in Nyanza tell our guys that, yo, this is not our fight. You've seen people try to do that. But now we need to double down on our efforts of civic education and massive just registration, because if this is maybe Ruto's plan to rope in now opposition, rope in key names from all these parties, from the alleged opposition, so that they solidify the political class. They're doing this because if you see, even when you saw Sudi akiongea pale akiongea in like a gathering, he said vile nyinyi nawaona ni njaa tu inawasumbua. A lot of them look at us and they think that it's business as usual. They will try and make it, you see, when the president says a broad base, I think what they mean is just uniting the political elites. And what that could do is that they will try to treat us as voter bases. That's why we have to double down. If you unashikilia hii ministry, we unashikilia hii ministry. We are pushing against corruption because we lose 600 billion to corruption, man. That could sort out education. It could sort out hunger. Because you've seen all those painful images and videos of children still drinking dirty water while people are flying in and building toilets. You've seen there are people who've been in this revolution who are never gonna walk again. There are people who are not going to make it for the next demonstrations because their lives were taken unfairly and unjustly. We've still not seen any reforms in the police sector. We've still not seen any reforms in education. We've still not seen any reforms in sports or health. As much as he says he's dissolved the cabinet, there's still no reforms. These are not tangible things. And this, while it sounds like a win to appease us, people are still showing up dead in swamps. People are still showing up in random places. People are still being abducted. So as Kenyans, we have to be very, very petty and just keep injecting.
After having listened to that, that is the general feeling and mixed reactions from different sections of Kenyans. And maybe an honest advice to the president as we start this podcast, which is generally an interpretative podcast on what awaits next the president or what is next for him after having dismissed the rest of the cabinet. And we are starting off by telling Ruto that he has to climb down and has to move away from his controlling agenda and go back to the people and let people have a conversation not controlled by the president. That is why I'm also on the agreement with the people when they say that they do not want a dialogue with the president. They dialogued on themselves, among themselves. They themselves know what is ailing them and what is ailing this country. And after having dialogued on that, then it's upon the president to pick on that and not purport to be wanting to be part of the dialogue, because that dialogue mandate had been given by him when people went to the ballot on the 8th of August 2022. So that is when people had a dialogue with him. Now it's upon him to be accountable and be answerable to the people. And in any case, the decision by Ruto to fire the cabinet, that the president has still retained his government, because as it stands, most of the permanent principal secretaries are his cronies who have been running the show, while the fired cabinet secretaries have been just like flower girls in state departments. Remember, most of the principal secretaries are political rewardees from his backyard. And that is where the next conversation starts. That, you know what, after forming your cabinet, it is now to extend the purge and to extend the sword that you are ordered by the Gen Zs to the principal secretaries, and let the cabinet be a representative of the people of Kenya and not a representative of people from a certain region or of your colonies whom you intend to award with state appointments. Of course, the next thing should be also to lower the cadre and sack his advisors. The so-purported Special Economic Advisory Team of the President was a letdown to him in as far as the Finance Bill 2024 and the management of the monetary policy of this country is concerned. That is where he should next spread the curb and extend the shocker also on the same. Another issue that awaits Ruto is on the issue of the deaths, the events and cases of police brutality that were recorded during the demonstrations by the Gen Zs are still things that will still take him down if he doesn't look into them carefully. The issues around forced disappearances, extrajudicial killings are things that are going to hold him. And this has even held him even on international accounts. You remember, in the run-up to the 2022 general elections, the president was on a various media outlet tour and on various campaign platforms saying that, you know, with his government, we are going to see an end to the menace at that time of rivers of bodies being picked, dumped on River Yala and other dumping sites. He has not walked the talk. And of course, you see some people have even carried forward the tag to associate Ruto with the disappearances because they used to happen when he was the deputy president of Kenya, and they are still happening when he's the president of Kenya. So there is no way he's going to run away from this if he doesn't act. It is his time to redeem himself, in as much as people are still saying that the end result is to see him also go. That is possible. Let nobody lie to him that having started exercising the purge, now people will spare him with sympathy. This is, as I'd said, a slow revolutionary moment. You know, the misinterpretation of the likes of Kimani Ichung'wah, Moses Kuria, David Ndii et al., that this was just an online wanking activity is wrong. The other thing that Ruto has to do on the security docket is, of course, to address the level of discordancy in between the Directorate of Criminal Investigations and the National Intelligence Service. You know, we received some intelligence reports and some confidential reports that there were cases and instances where people who are being abducted and kidnapped, the DCI that was being blamed for carrying the same was equally not aware of the same. What was happening? It was reported that it was the NIS guys who used to pick people in some instances. In as much as the DCI also used to pick people, the NIS also used to pick people and take them to unknown locations and only later on dump them in the nearest police stations after online uproar that so person X or Y is missing. That one he has to address clearly. And there is every need also to see to it that there is a serious reorganization in terms of the security management of this country, and especially the major cities within this country, Nairobi not forgotten. You know, this was one of the most disorganized methods of combating the protests, and even a section of officers from the police service admitted to this, that they seem to be commandless. They seem to be not having any idea of how to deal with the demonstrators in the tax protests, because they, according to them, they were forced to use old tactics that they used to use before in combating protests that majorly were violent. But these kind of protests, they were peaceful. So they tried using force, they tried using tear gas, they tried using live bullets and rubber bullets, but that one only attracted a condemnation from members of the public and the international community. So there is every need for a serious reorganization of the police and the security apparatus of this country, starting the purge with the Inspector General of Police. Ruto now has to look into is the issue of the frosty relations between him and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua. That one, if he's not careful, is going to destabilize his government in the next coming years, remembering that we have less than 3 years to the next general elections. You know, the frostiness of the relationship between him and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, what of in the event that things escalate further and they go to the extent that they don't sit pretty well with Rigathi Gachagua, and Gachagua decides to take a political exit or another political movement parallel to his government. That one will give him a lot of problem. And in that event, Gachagua might decide to reach out to the sacked or dismissed, some of the dismissed cabinet secretaries, and say, you know, I want to offer you a lifeline to give an internal opposition to my boss. That one is likely to work against him, having worked for him during Uhuru's tenure, when he teamed with a section of some of the members of the cabinet, the likes of Davis Chirchir, whom he later awarded also with the Minister of Energy portfolio, in order to combat the wave of Uhuru Kenyatta in Jubilee by then. Ruto, this is the time that is in something that can only be called that is in, politically, Ruto is in a quagmire. Because, you know, when he will have the new cabinet in office, it will mean that maybe a majority of the members of the cabinet will be new faces or first-timers in the cabinet. And this will mean that they will require at least some months, if not a year, in order for them to settle in and finally have a clear steer and control of their various ministerial portfolios. So, you count 1 year from now, that will be maybe almost 1 year to the next general elections. So, that one will mean that he'll have only about 1.2 years in order to serve the people. Remembering that for the first 2 or 3 years that he's been in office, there has been a lot of disorganization and poor management of some of the ministerial positions, bearing in mind the importance of these various ministries in contribution to him achieving part of his agenda that he was elected on and his manifesto. Anyway, the person to blame in all this is still Ruto himself, because it is as a result of his bad choices that the country is finding itself in the situation that the country is in right now, where we don't have an entire members of the cabinet. Of course, after constituting or reconstituting the cabinet, the president has also to extend the purge for the inefficient principal secretaries and parastatal chiefs. And of course, there will be other influences in this, such as reward for the broad-based unity government that he proposed, that he wants to create after this. So he also has to reduce the number of the PSS, because the current number stands at 51. Uhuru's permanent principal secretaries, the number stood at 44. Because also, remember that the Constitution of Kenya is clear that the number of cabinet secretaries should not extend about 22 or 23. I think it's 22. But the same Constitution is silent on the number of principal secretaries. I guess that's now a window for him to exercise his executive powers and see to it the kind of economic situation that Kenya is in, and try to reduce the number in order to also appeal to the people who have been having a pressure on him. This is also a moment for him to reverse on the tribal appointments to various state departments that he did after 2022 general elections. I was reading something here that was shared to me. Let me see if I can be able to get it, on how various state departments are headed by people from majorly the Rift Valley side, and the list reads as follows. I think you can see it on your screens. The head of civil service is Felix Kosgei, Kenyan CEO Abraham Serem, Kenya Power CEO Joseph Siror, Kenya Pipeline CEO Joe Sang, Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Agency CEO Daniel Kipto, Kenya Nuclear Regulatory Authority Director General is James Keter, Ketraco Company Secretary Lydia Sitenei, Kenya Post Authority CEO William Ruto, KEMRI CEO Elijah Songok, New KCC CEO Nixon Sigei, NSSF CEO Davis Koros, NCPB CEO John Ngetich, just but among others. The list is up to about over 20 people. The last number there is number 38, where the Nzoia Sugar MD is Ezron Kotu. So this is the time for him to also reverse these appointments based on tribal affiliations or rewardments and give them out based on qualifications, and notwithstanding looking at the regional balance of every region in this country. Of course, this is also a moment for him to work, and let's have our homegrown solutions to our financial problems. The issue of going to the International Monetary Fund in order to influence or have a debate or a talk or a directional policy on how we are going to pay our debts, how we are going to service our economy, has proven to be hostile with the citizens of this country. Thank you for watching. That marks the end of our analysis.